Hello everyone. As I just said, my name is Nick Brdar, and I am so honored and excited to be with you all virtually today. Before I get started, I would just like to take a moment to thank you all for being here right now, especially those of you from back home in California. I know an 8 a.m. wake up on a Saturday morning might not be the ideal way that you want to start your weekend, but thank you. And in all seriousness, thank you all for saying yes. For saying yes, suicide prevention is essential. For saying yes, there are gaps in mental health care that need to be addressed. For saying yes, my life matters, and so does yours. So today I'll be sharing my story with all of you. The story of how I came to the point where I too could agree with that last yes. My life matters. So for some background, I'm originally from California, born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area with my amazing mom and brother. And now I'm back in Ann Arbor, just starting up my junior year at the University of Michigan. I'm majoring in psychology and neuroscience, hope to pursue an MD PhD program in psychiatry after undergrad. Outside of school, I love to go on hikes, spend time with my friend, try out new coffee shops, walk my dog Yogi, who I'm sure is watching back home with my mom right now too. And currently I'm the Director of Program Development for Wolverine Support Network, a student organization on campus that hosts weekly peer-led support groups for students to support their mental health and day-to-day lives. I'm the programming chair for U of M's chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and host presentations to numerous student orgs on campus to bring light to the conversation on suicide. And I'm also a counselor for the crisis text line. So if you couldn't put the pieces together by now, I'm pretty passionate about mental health and always have been this passionate about mental health, but I wasn't always in a place to effectively display this passion. So growing up, I was consistently known as the happiest kid around. I had and still have a huge smile and a huge passion for life. So when I started to lose that internal sense of happiness during the summer before my junior year of high school, I kept that inside and I put on a mask. I put that mask back up. I kept the happiness up. And I was still afraid to reach out because I thought that my entire identity relied on the fact that I was that happy person growing up, that I was the happy Nick. So early in my junior year, my best friend's brother passed away unexpectedly. And in addition to being a really close family friend, this person was also a recent graduate of my high school and was well known throughout our campus. After his passing, our campus suffered a lot of pain and grief. Surprisingly, in addition to the grief I felt, I was also feeling a sense of relief. This was the first time I could openly display my emotions, the emotions besides joy and happiness, to those around me. It was so amazing to be supported by so many loving people. And as my school community moved on in their healing process, I found myself slowly putting up that mask and that facade of happiness. Everyone seemed to be healing just fine, moving on, going to class, but I still felt that profound sense of sadness in my heart. The only difference was that now I didn't feel comfortable sharing it with others or reaching out for support. It was during this time that I had so many emotions built up inside that I just couldn't take it anymore, and one night I just broke down to my mom. I was so frustrated that I wasn't the happy Nick anymore, but opening up to my mom truly was the first step in my mental health recovery process. And unfortunately, it wasn't just smooth sailing from that point on. I went through continuous ups and downs. At home, I felt sad and worthless, unable to get out of bed on the weekends. At school, I could barely focus in class or concentrate on assignments. My grades slipped. Thankfully, I was taking steps toward finding things that supported my mental health, from my school counselor to my close friends, and even finding a therapist and psychiatrist. And again, I found myself feeling worse before I got better. Talking with my therapist started bringing up some old painful memories from the trauma I experienced during a toxic relationship in my childhood. Finding the correct dose of medication with my psychiatrist was just as challenging. I thought I was taking all the right steps, but I wasn't getting better still. At this point, I had little hope and started to experience urges to harm myself or end my life for the first time ever. I was scared at first, but eventually felt comfortable enough to talk to my therapist about this, who helped me find where I could get support should I ever find myself in those headspaces. And eventually, after more ups and downs, I received a primary diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder in addition to the depression and anxiety I've been experiencing. While these diagnoses initially seemed to define me, I found that they actually served as a piece of hope and comfort. I wasn't the only one who'd ever experienced what I was feeling. There was a name to what I was feeling, and I could finally understand the pieces of my life that kind of led me to this point. From in this time feeling sad to overly stressed to distracted to even suicidal, I found some source of hope and comfort in knowing that I wasn't the only one there. And I learned that it was okay to not be okay, to not be that happy Nick all the time. And at the same time, I worked harder than ever to get back to that sense of happiness that I so dearly missed. With all that said, I want to be very clear. It was not easy. Unfortunately, as you're going to see a theme going through this story, there were constant ups and downs. Trying to find a new medication, feeling hopeful, then getting worse and experiencing side effects. Meeting my therapist, making progress, and then relapsing. And over time, I learned to expect that these natural ups and downs of life were a completely normal part of recovery. I learned new ways to celebrate the highs while also figuring out what to do when the lows eventually came along. My mom and a few of my best friends were there for me through all the highs and lows, and I truly cannot thank them enough, because it wasn't easy for them either, and I learned that they valued our relationship enough to stick with me through these battles. I am so grateful to have had people in my life during this time that were willing to brave the storm with me, from talking to them about my days or what happened at school, to even teaching them what to do if I became suicidal and needed immediate help. Without the support I found in them during that time, my current reality would be much, much different. And I imagine a lot of folks viewing this may also be in a similar position of support. So thank you for being the rock. You may feel weak or helpless or even hopeless at times, but your support is so, so necessary and so very appreciated. Thank you. And at a certain point, despite all that support that I so appreciated, I'd had enough of this battle. Despite that support, despite seeing my therapist weekly, and despite the brief periods of improvement I experienced. So on May 13th, 2017, I tried to end my life. It was during the hospital stay after this suicide attempt that I realized I needed something more. I ended up taking a risk and spent 40 days in a residential treatment program across the country in Wisconsin. And I find it funny telling this story in Michigan is a lot different than telling it back home in California. I get a lot of raised eyebrows when I say across the country in Wisconsin here in Michigan. But for me at the time, it was across the country. And here at this treatment program, the combination of cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and experiential therapy were great. It was just what I needed. But most importantly, what I needed during this time, in addition to these therapies, was just the chance to take a break from the normal stressors of life and school and focus on my recovery and focus on my well-being. And this treatment was just what I needed. So 40 days later, I left that treatment center filled with hope. Not a hope that I was better or fixed, but rather a hope that should I ever experience those profound lows again, I would be able to survive them and even learn to thrive through them. And I cannot even begin to express my gratitude for this treatment I received that summer and all of those who helped me through my battle. But with that gratitude comes a very, very stark realization. Without this program, my story would have been much different. Frankly, without this program, my story probably would have already ended. That's why the work being done by Garrett Space is so essential, and I cannot express that enough. Because I consider myself very lucky. I had the resources to be able to fly across the country and receive treatment at a nationally recognized hospital program. If that weren't the case, my story could have ended there. I was 17 at the time, which meant I still qualified to stay in the adolescent program. If that weren't the case, I would have been in the adult treatment program. And let me just tell you something that a lot of people fail to realize in the world of mental health treatment. Adult psychiatry is much different than adolescent psychiatry or even just young adult psychiatry. Don't get me wrong, both are so essential and so necessary, but nothing changed the day I turned 18 to make me ready and feel comfortable to go through treatment with other adults that are upwards of 50 or 60. I needed to be surrounded by peers that truly understood my life circumstances rather than people that were at much different points in their lives and in their journeys. Without being supported by the peers my age I could deeply relate to, my story easily could have ended there. Again, I feel very fortunate that this all worked out for me, but I don't really think that I was somehow more deserving of a treatment program that helped me than some other young adult is, or someone who had just turned 18 the day before. And that's why the work at Garrett Space is so important. We need treatment programs specifically for young adults. We need places where folks can just take a break from their chaotic lives and focus on their mental health recovery. We need Garrett Space. Thankfully, my treatment allowed me to continue writing my story, and I hope you all see how Garrett Space will do the same for the stories of so many others like myself. And I'm really excited to still be writing my story and be telling it to you today. I've come a long way from the high school student constantly feeling worthless, not being able to focus in class, and wanting to end my life. Today I stand here as a student of one of the best public universities in the world, working at a research lab under a nationally known neuroscientist and holding leadership positions in many mental health organizations at U of M. And I share these victories, along with all the hardships I've experienced, to exemplify that even when the darkness comes crashing in, there will always be a glimmer of hope. I share my story so that hopefully I can be that glimmer of hope, peeking through the darkness of someone who is out there, that someone who isn't sure they want to keep writing their story. And I have to be honest and say it's not perfect. I still struggle. Some days my success is finding a new discovery in the research lab, acing an exam, or coming up with a new great idea for a student org on campus. Other days, my success is just getting out of bed and surviving the day. And I've learned that both of these successes are just that, successes. So, thankfully, and with hope I say this, my story is not over. It's a lifelong journey of ups and downs. The only difference, writing my story today, is that I can stand here feeling happy, feeling filled with purpose, and confident that I can overcome whatever struggles are still yet to come, and tell you unequivocally that there is hope and there will always be hope in your story. Thank you.